Hello, you are listening to the Field Coach Experts podcast, where we share the secrets of franchisee support that are unlocking hidden profitability in progressive brands across North America. And the secret we're talking about today is accountability and motivation and follow through. Today's episode is brought to you by Permit Pros, a new sponsor, a new supporter of AC Inc. and all the work that we do, which is really exciting for us. And this is the team that is helping franchise brands and business owners simplify the permitting process, avoid costly delays, and move projects forward with confidence. From start to approval, Permit Pros helps take the stress out of permits so you can stay focused on growth. Boy, would I have liked to have had that service when I was a franchisee and getting permits and all those things that were going on. All right, so yeah, shout out to Permit Pros. And so our topic again for today, the secret we're talking about is accountability, motivation, and follow through. And of course, I've got today's episode is Jen Brannon and I. How are you, Jen?
I'm great. How are you, Ange?
I'm good. I don't know if this is a secret I'm allowed to divulge, but we always record these on a Friday. So I don't know about you, but I'm kind of happy that it's Friday.
Friday, it's a beautiful day. Looking forward to the weekend.
Awesome. Okay. So let's get into this. Let's unpack and accountability is something that we talk a lot about, but let's start with why it matters. Just going to start right there, Jen. When I ask you that, what pops into your head? Why does this even matter? Why does accountability matter to a franchisor especially?
I think accountability, I always feel like, accountability is directly related to your business and what you need to do in your business. You are accountable to growing your business, becoming profitable, and doing those action steps. And I think that if you're accountable to that, then you're accountable to growth. And so for a franchise system as a franchisee, if I'm an accountable person and I own it and I own my actions, that I'm going to be growing and driving my business. Same with a franchisor. If we are building a culture of accountability with our franchisees, we're going to directly see a positive impact in their performance, and which means, right, as we know, more revenue, happier franchisees, more royalty, much more robust and strong system.
Yeah, system growth overall. And accountability means that people are doing what they should do to grow. And I think the key word there is grow, like you said, accountability to growth. All franchisors want their franchisees to grow. They want them to want to grow, but lots of things get in the way. So we'll probably get into some of those things a little bit more as we go here. I would say, driving accountability leads to overall economic gains for everybody. Like you said, royalties, same-store sales growth, and all these important things. So let's talk about what healthy accountability actually looks like. What does it mean? And what does it actually look like in a franchisee coaching relationship?
I love, as far as a healthy accountability, and anybody that's been listening to this podcast, this is not going to be anything new. It's really about how we are tying in the accountability for a franchisee doing the things they need to do in their business to grow their business, and which means it's tied into their own goals. And that's when accountability, in my mind, is the healthiest. It's that human factor of what's important to these franchisees. Where do they want to see their business from a long-term? What's their long-term vision? And then let's help them create some short-term goals so that they can hit that long-term vision. And it's building those steps of the accountability to doing the action steps they need to do to reach those goals. And so what that does is it takes away the pressure that I know franchisees feel of when the franchisor is like telling them, you have to hit this amount, you've got to hit these KPIs, and it's just in that sense, it's pressure for the sake of pressure, because the franchisor has ideas of where they want the franchisee to go. Whereas if the franchisee, it's tied into their own goals and their own action steps, then it's just going to foster that accountability better.
You said at the beginning, it's not something that we haven't said before, but what we're about to say, we're going to go deeper on, just to clarify, in case people are like, well, then why am I listening? I think the point is, it's just so important, right?
It's so important, and all of this is tied to each other. Everything we talk about on these podcasts, really, I think a lot of it does come down to everyone's accountability,
Yeah.
as business owners and franchisees and franchisors, right?
Yeah.
Like
We'll get into that.
that's how we grow strong systems and strong businesses, is
Yeah.
by being accountable to doing those things we need to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that too. That it's a two-way street, and what that should look like, and all of that as well. Yeah. So okay. So we've established, what it looks like. Well, first of all, why it matters. What it looks like. What really went through my mind when you were explaining that is, we recently had a community roundtable where we used a coaching script and showed the difference between consulting and coaching. And if anybody's listened to us before, you've probably heard us talk about that too. But you see a lot of franchisors saying, your market should be, this is about a $500,000 store or location should be. So you should be hitting, 500,000 annually. So in order to do that, here's what you need to do. Go do these things, and you need to hit this many leads and this many reach outs. And then for some reason, the franchisee's not motivated to do it, right? And that actually happened to me. Like they had the budget, or the projections, for my first store, and it was like, here's what you got to do. And instead, what we're saying is working with the franchisee, flip it around and work with them to find out what they want out of it. And maybe that might require pushing them a little too, right? Like if they think it's too hard to hit the higher number, might be helping them see a vision that they didn't think of, and that you're going to be there to support them to get there. Yeah. So, okay, well, let's get into myths or like things people get wrong. Well, we kind of just touched a little bit on it, but also, yeah, myths. What stands out for you when I say, what are some of the myths out there that you see people think about accountability?
I think franchisors, coaches, anybody working with franchisees can often feel like accountability needs to come through with that being tough, being confrontational, holding people accountable to our numbers and our goals and everything that you just said, using the stick as if everyone's out there heard the carrot and the stick. Right? It's like we're going to make these people do these things, and they're going to be accountable to that. We all know that doesn't work. And so I think really coming up with a new definition for yourselves in your brands or your own business is what does true accountability mean for us? Because there's no point in having something and believing in a system if it's not going to work for the majority of your franchisees. Right? Some franchisees might respond to the stick, but not the majority. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, well, and especially with, if the stick is like you said, authoritative and all of that, then it might work for most of the times. It's not going to work for long if it works initially. And I think it's interesting because people often think of accountability as taking away kind of freedom. And, you often hear that structure provides freedom because then what your boundaries are, if that makes sense. And I feel like accountability kind of does the same in that it helps, well, I guess it helps with focus, right? And then okay, this is what I need to do. I'm accountable to doing these action steps, again, to hit the goal I want because I want it. And, I know now what I need to do. So like, I guess what I'm saying is accountability provides clarity and focus.
100%. Absolutely.
Because something people don't realize, right?
Right. And to promote accountability, we have to make sure that we have that clarity and the focus and things are consistent and we know it. Because sometimes we're trying to keep franchisees accountable to things they don't even know that they're accountable for.
Yeah.
Because the messaging isn't there, or there's mixed messages in all kinds of different ways. Like even if we go all the way back, whenever I've in the past worked with franchise brands on, what I used to do is do some of the Fran Dev process and things. I was always big on building in training for your new franchisees who've just signed, or actually even in the process. What does it mean to be a franchisee, and what does it mean to be a franchisor? And what are we each accountable for? And starting that accountable conversation early days, so it's very, very clear what both sides are accountable for, to the system and to themselves and to each other. And that was always a really good practice. I really liked seeing brands do that, and starting that fostering of accountability right from the beginning.
Yeah, actually, let's go there. Let's kind of go there for a minute on the like fostering. It kind of got me thinking about the franchisor responsibility as well when you were saying that. So, yeah. So first of all, yeah, the importance of talking about all of this early on is critical, right? What does it mean having, like you said, the franchisee-franchisor relationship? What does that mean? And maybe even asking, this is a great question to ask in the franchise recruitment process. What does accountability mean to you? And let's talk about, how you feel when you're being held accountable and what works and what, like, just getting that conversation out feels like a really good idea. So it's interesting because I think about, just when I think about, I'm going to think, instead of the franchisor side for a minute, I'm just thinking about the system on the whole. When I think about franchisees, I talk about this in my keynote actually when I'm talking about the option to grow, sell, or close, right? It's awesome because more and more franchisors are liking that I have that built in to talk about that. And because just for context, it's that when I was going through all the ups and downs of being a franchisee and realizing it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, that I realized that I had to figure this out because it was either grow, sell, or close. Being stagnant or just staying the same was first of all not safe, because if people are watching, they can see I've got my hand. If revenue's up here and costs are down here, but now your costs go up and they go past your revenue, now you're in trouble. That's what happens if you just stay the same and you're not accountable to growth. Now, what if your competition comes in and starts taking away your customers, and now you're losing a lot of money. So not only is it dangerous for you as a franchisee, but it's not fair to the brand if you're not trying to grow, because they could have put a franchisee in that market that would have optimized the market, which would help everybody, because that franchisee would be out there growing the brand and being accountable to what they're responsible for. The more I looked around as a franchisee and noticed that the franchisees who had, like, what my peers who had the most highest, I meant to say the best, were at the top of the charts in the rankings, seemed to be the ones that had the most, attitude of accountability, and yet the most freedom and financial success and all these. So it's interesting that all goes hand in hand, like being responsible for growth, accountable to growth, responsible to the brand, responsible to their peers and their family, right? Like, as a franchisee, I think you're accountable to all of that, because you're going to franchise. So it's not something that you can just decide, I'm not going to worry about growing or doing what I need to do. I need to be accountable to this brand. So then what is the franchisor responsible accountable for, do you think, then, for franchisees?
So many things. Everything that's on their FDD that they're supposed to be accountable to. But we can go into things like, one of my pet peeves is do what you say you're going to do. So many brands, we're going to do this great initiative. Something falls through, they don't do it, but it's never mentioned again. Or we're going to have this coaching program. Your coaches are going to meet with you at least every month. That doesn't happen, right? So I think whatever we create, whatever system we create, whatever initiative that we're rolling out, do what you're going to do, but then at the same time, things don't always work out. So communicate that, this is what happened We want the transparency. We don't want the silence, because then we make stuff up, right? So,
Not usually nice stuff.
yeah. So I think there is a lot of things that the franchisor is accountable, and we could go down a whole other road. I think if you think about this from the coach's side, working from a franchisor, maybe if we circle it even back to some of the myths, and connecting those two, right? Like we should be accountable to coaching our franchisees, because back to what you said, franchisees should be accountable to themselves and their goals and doing what they need to do. But I know that we've got lots of franchisor listeners right now saying, yeah, but they're not. They don't. And that's absolutely true. We see it, right? This is why we've got our certain number of low performers, and maybe some of those mid performers that should be performing better. And I think it's really about helping them. So maybe franchisors, we need to be accountable to help our franchisees be accountable. And then the way we do that is, again, through coaching for growth, helping the franchisee understand what their goals are, and helping the franchisee keep ownership and accountable to those goals. Lots of myths out there, like, well, when we keep bringing it up, we're just nagging the franchisee, or the franchisee created their own goals. They should do what they're supposed to do. And again, yeah, we can say that all day long. They should do it. But a lot of people struggle with that. They need an accountability partner. And that's a key element of the coaching role that I think is lost a lot of the time, especially when we're focusing just on making good operators, is your coach as an accountability partner to work with your franchisee to help them figure out what those action steps are to, hit their goals, or even what their goals are, what their vision is, and just help them along the way. So, yeah.
I think that a lot of people, we talk about this a lot, but a lot of people probably just heard you and thought, but we are supporting, we do everything for them. We they can call us anytime, and we give them all their marketing assets, and they maybe think that's accountability. To be clear, we know at AC Inc., we know that you don't have to coach your franchisees. You could just have a hotline support system. You could have a ticketing system for when they need operational support. You could just provide a good LMS and a good point of sale system, the marketing assets, all that, and just go there. But from what we see, that isn't creating growth. So in terms of accountability, I would just say I don't think the franchisor is actually accountable to coaching and using a better approach, but they'd be silly not to when it works to drive accountability with franchisees.
Yeah, maybe I should have said, I think franchisors should be accountable. Maybe I should change my words, right? Yeah. I personally do. As a former franchisee, that's my personal opinion, but you're right.
And I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. So if you want to be a franchisor that attracts good franchisees, right fit franchisees for you, potentially good performers, then they're going to come to a brand where they know, like if they know that there's this kind of accountability relationship, again, that goes both ways. I think one more thing I want to point, I really like what you said. I just want kind of emphasize one thing about the follow through, and if you don't do it, I think accountability is a big thing. I think people might not have caught how critical this is, but when communicating, be accountable to communicating when you don't do what you thought you were going to do, or when you mess up, like being able to say, you know what, we messed up and here's how we're fixing it. Yep. And also, we're probably going to mess up again someday. I think that more franchisors should be more upfront about that.
Yep, own your mistakes.
We don't have this figure. I say all the time this thing about my dad with the 100 locations. He didn't know what he was doing, and still at 200. Did he know now? No, still don't know. I've never run a franchise with 200, and all the way up to almost 500, never felt like I know everything and we're never going to make mistakes. And so I think being clear that that's going to happen, but then being accountable to communicating it and accountable to fixing it. either collaboratively with the franchisees or on your own. I think some things that franchisors should be thinking about. Let's get into how accountability can turn into micromanagement.
When there's a when accountability, I think it's about the mistake that people make in thinking accountability is micromanagement. And were you, I mean, you were a franchisee. Did you have any coaches or anybody that would come and try to micromanage you?
That's why AC Inc. exists. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? They would come into my store and, and it would be like, you haven't done this, and you said you were going to do that, and you need to go do this, and you should fire, not these days, this would be more risky than even ever,
Yeah.
but you should fire that staff member because they did this. And whereas flipping that around would have been, again, you mentioned that, maybe you mentioned that you are trying to get to a point where you can spend one day a week working on the business. And what have you been doing towards that? And you said you were going to do these things, and it didn't happen. Oh, what got in the way? Like, let's work through that together, right? And try to figure out where things went off the rails. That's accountability versus just coming in and trying to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and not creating any ownership around it as well.
Yeah. And I think micromanagement / dependency, right? There's two different ways of looking at that are very similar in the fact that, the micro is every little thing about your business. I'm going to tell you exactly what you should do, and give a lot of instruction. The similar side to that is the dependency, where I, as the franchisee, if I need anything, want anything, I'm going to come to you, my coach, because I know you're going to give it to me. And you're going to tell me what I should do. You're going to tell me where to find the thing that I'm looking for. And therefore, we're kind of eroding my own accountability to figure things out for myself. And we're wasting a whole lot of that coach's time, because that coach is then going to be dealing with all of these issues that maybe I should be figuring out myself. And then I'm not going to totally own it. I'm not going to be in that mind frame of really being accountable to my own plan. And when that happens, a franchise system that's operating like this is so open the door for this. And what that means is I'm pointing the finger back at you, franchisor, because it's your fault that I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
Because you fostered in me that ability to get everything I need from you, and assume that, and now I'm not taking any ownership on for my role in it. Even though I know you, franchisor, think I should, but you've created kind of that culture of dependency and micromanagement.
Yeah. I heard that one loud and clear when we got to do the panel. You guys, I was in the audience, which was fun, at the CFA this year, and hearing Tessa, one of the panelists, say that when they shifted from, this all relates back to the consulting versus coaching, really, because accountability comes up in the coaching, whereas micromanaging comes up more in the consulting side of things, right? And she said that once they made a shift to this more proactive coaching approach, there was less blame. The franchisees weren't blaming them anymore. And it's so true that if I'm telling you, Jen, the franchisee, okay, so you need to get 40 leads, and here's how you do it. And what if you go do it and it doesn't work? Mm-hmm. That's what you're kind of getting at here, right? Yep. Like, I told you to do it, and it doesn't work. Now it is the franchisor's fault because we told you to do it. Now you might, as the franchisor, go, they probably did it wrong or whatever, but either way, they can see it as your fault. So yeah, accountability is really so much more, again, about the human and the individual and understanding the person. And it sounds a little fluffy on the surface, but again, if we can get the franchisee to be taking action, it's, again, all comes back to increased satisfaction, potential increase in revenue, and then royalty revenue, and system growth, and shareholder value, and all the things that at the end of the day people really want. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Should we get into some practical tips? This is a good time to get in some practical tips for field coaches.
Sure.
We've dropped a few, but maybe we can just make sure we've got some good ones out
Yeah.
there. So let's picture a coach is going out there, getting on a call right after this podcast. They're getting on a call with a franchisee. What are some things they might start to try?
So, you mentioned our consulting versus coaching community roundtable that we did this week, where we really showed the benefit and what would happen if we stopped talking at our franchisees and telling them what to do and start asking questions to get the franchisee to figure out whether it be come to a conclusion or make a decision on their own just by us asking questions. So that would be a big thing, because then we're putting it back on them to make that decision. Now, the way that you ask those questions is key. We're not going to jump into this right now, but framing things, we may know the answer, and but if we tell it to them, it doesn't sink in. They don't take the ownership over it, as opposed to when we ask them the question. So easy example is, we know they should, I don't know what, do a local community event. Rather than saying, okay, you need to get out there and do some events, because the franchisee is going to be like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do some events. Whereas if we asked a question such as, okay, well, Susan over in I don't know where, Newmarket, she did like 4 events last month, and they really worked out well for her. What do you think about that idea? I know some of the other franchisees have had a lot of luck with that. What do you think about that? Is that something that you would want to think about as brand awareness activity? Or maybe actually that was a closed-ended question. I need to say that in an open-ended way. So what do you think about that? Right. And then you get that, because then they may come to the conclusion, oh, it really worked for whoever over there in Newmarket. Okay, let's talk more about this. Right. So I think asking more questions, stop what you're telling. Yeah, go ahead.
Adding to that.
Yeah.
But then if they say, oh, I could never do an event like that, then why? Like, why? What stops? Oh, I don't know how. Oh, well, okay, let's think about what do you think? Let's talk about what the steps might be. What would be one of the first steps? Deciding on the event, okay. And then talking to the organizer, okay. And you might even give them a couple hints and clues to get moving on this, right? But working through, often resistance comes from, we always say, a confused mind says no. And they are fearful. So yeah, that's the difference in the approach that leads to accountability, because they're bought in once they realize they can do it. Yep. Buy-in really helps with accountability, doesn't it? That's the whole.
Absolutely.
I just decided that is like the whole thing.
Yeah, they have to be bought in, and that's why we need them to say it. We need them to come to the conclusion that they want to do it, or they will do it. Yeah. And related to that is because that great point, what you said there, Ange, because then that leads us into being able to capture those action steps, right? So, okay, so you want to do some more events. What are some of your first action steps that you want to take in order to make that happen? And then we help them with that. We ask them more questions. And I mean, we're not saying you never tell anything to a franchisee. There's times where we're going to say, you know what? I know that like the Eventbrite website might be a great place to start. Like it's not every single thing has to be a question.
Yeah. Well, where might you find that in the
Yes, exactly. But and then it's like we're capturing the action steps. We're talking through how they're going to do that. We're getting their buy-in and their commitment for those action steps. Now we have accountability. Yeah. Because now they feel like, oh, I said it, I'm going to do it, I'm bought into doing it. Now, as a coach, when we see them again next week or next month or whatever it is, now we can hold them accountable. Yeah. Because they said it, and they said they were going to do it, and they were bought into doing it. So I think that's really key.
Also, they're probably, because they're also feeling the support, like that we're in this together. Like, you're helping me. You believe that I can do this. You believe in me, and I know I can reach out if I need help with this. That's again, going to create accountability. It's going to create action that's going to lead to accountability. Yeah. Okay. So a couple more. These, by the way, we can even just call this the Go Be Awesome Challenge. Like, we always have like the action challenge at the end of every pod. So everybody that's listening right now, if you are a regular listener and you're thinking, this is it right now. Get your pen and paper out.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Anything that you're holding a franchisee accountable to, you've got to follow up on. That's the worst, is when we talked about this event, you're going to go do these things, and then next time I talk to you, I don't even bring it up. I don't ask you about it. I don't hold you accountable to doing it, right? So we need to absolutely be following the follow through. How did it go? What happened? What was the result? And just because they didn't do it may not, like, it's not like, oh, everything's, ruined now.
Yeah,
why didn't they do it? What happened? Maybe they got stuck and they didn't know what to do, right? So we talk it through with them, and then we kind of overcome that hurdle, re-engage in the commitment, and now they know the actions. Maybe we need to break the action steps into tinier baby steps instead, right? So the follow through, being curious about it, giving the attaboy or attagirls when they followed through or did something or had a win or whatever it might be. So you're celebrating those actions that maybe they had created. So and then just keep that and this is a big miss with brands. I hear a lot of that. There's no coaching notes anywhere. There's no strategic plan. It's just, a lot of times it's just check in. How can I help you? What are your problems? Yeah, you have to have something that you're documenting all of these things, and that you're actually also noting what got done, so that you can, again, go back and celebrate that accountability and them doing what they need to do. So those are a few pieces. Being clear and consistent and structured.
I think real quick, maybe I'll just point out that when you talk about like notes or storing this information or data, we are definitely big on. We love using the AI as a tool in coaching calls. Of course, making sure that you might have to help the franchisee understand the value of it. Sometimes people are a little bit nervous and resistant to things being recorded or using AI. But if you can help them understand what they're going to get out of it, is that we're going to be able to have notes from this. Also, of course, at AC Inc., we're all about the toolbox and all the trackers and things that are in there that serve as a beautiful hub. I get to say that because I didn't create it, but it's such a great hub for all the things that are being worked on. So some kind of a system there that could be its own podcast interview or a topic in itself, because it's something people are trying to figure out. But even just making sure you have something, even if it's basic, whatever it is. But there's lots of tools out there for that. Mm-hmm. So, okay. I think those are some really good practical tips. I think we said this a lot at the beginning, but just making sure people also add in that when they do get discouraged or unmotivated, tying back to what they want out of this. And that may be what they want. Maybe they want to take Friday afternoons off with their kid. Or we might be referencing the beach house they want to buy someday. It depends on the franchisee and the way that they're thinking, but always tying it to something that's like the kind of what's in it for me, right? The WIFM. Tying the action to that. It's kind of like, I think a lot about, when people resist, whether it's exercise or healthy eating, and it's like, well, why are you trying to do this? What do you want out of it? And if it's, maybe so that you can look a certain way, feel a certain way, do a certain activity that you couldn't do, keep coming back to that. That's what motivates you to stay on track, right? And it's kind of like that. So knowing what it is that we're going for is good. Mm-hmm. Okay, anything we're missing before we wrap up here? I think we've covered quite a bit.
I think we've covered most things.
Okay, so we've given lots of things. If you're a franchisor listening to this, one of the things we find a lot is that a lot of times people in the C-suite and leaders might know this, but have you brought this to your team? Have you talked to your team about these practical tips? Share this podcast with your team. They can learn a lot from this in itself. So Okay, so we'll close it there. Thanks, Jen, for hanging out with me today. It's always a treat we get to do this. Awesome. And so, as always, we said the goal here is to leave people with simple action steps and ways to modernize your field coaching so that you can ultimately, unlock hidden profitability in your system, create mutual wins, satisfied franchisees, all the things that lead to more growth. So if something sparked a shift or a new idea for you today, make sure that you share the episode and reach out to us. We are always happy to talk about anything to do with improving franchisee performance and profitability through good coaching and support. So reach out to us. Come check out our roundtables if you're a franchisor. And until next time, go be awesome.